Rules, we won't worry about rules. I really hadn't explained this slide right here. This is something that my Sunday school teacher, when I was y'all's age, had me write in my Bible. This is in the front of my Bible I had when I was 10 to 16 years old. I cut it out of that Bible, put it in the next Bible I had. But it's 4 things of spiritual growth. I just go read Bible daily, pray daily, attend church, and witness to people. Share the gospel with people. We're going to talk about that a little bit today in the lesson. Did you want to sing, or we're going to go on straight into it?
We can do singing at the end.
Okay, we'll do singing at the end. All right. So what have we been talking about the last couple of weeks? Who is this man we call Jesus? Anybody remember why I was inspired to do this message? Anybody remember why? Anybody remember why I was inspired to do this message? One person ought to know real well.
You?
Maddie. It was Maddie's song she's been singing.
Oh, I don't have a picture of her before I was looking at something.
Last week, when I started looking at this a little bit deeper, I come into in John. Jesus starts talking about who he is, and that's kind of where I started my studying. So what was the first I am that we talked about last week? Does anybody remember?
What?
The first I am we talked about. What did we talk about last night? Jesus said, I am the... I don't think we got to that one yet. There's about 7 of them total. Everybody took notes and you don't have it. Last week we said Jesus said, I am the bread. So the first one was I am the bread. So the next one we're going to go to is the light. Now, how many of you walked in here and looked at that candle? How many seen that candle? How many, and while we've been talking, several of you have looked over at that candle several times. Why have y'all looked at that candle? Why have you looked at that candle?
I don't know, because it's just sitting there.
Now, I've done this lesson. Y'all know I've done this lesson before, something similar to this lesson before. Half of you have, half of you haven't. Well, all right. Why do you think? Why did you look at that candle?
Because it's like standing out and it's like light.
It's standing out and it's light. We are naturally drawn to the light. We are designed to be drawn to the light. Huh? We're moths.
Because
Moth.
moths glow in the dark.
Moths? No moths. I don't know.
Glows in the dark.
Do they glow in the dark?
You know what a moth is?
A moth, that's a good example. A moth is drawn to the light. We are moths in a way. We're drawn to the light. So we're going to be in John 8, verses 5 through 12. John 8, verses 5 through 12. John 8, 5 through 12.
Page 512, right?
Chapter 5, I'm sorry, John chapter 8, you got me all messed up. John chapter 8, we're going to start in verse 5. We're going to read verse 5 through 12. Noah, you were in Revelations. Oh, okay. You're in... No, you're in 1 John. You need to get over here. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Huh? You were there. You're good. All right. So verse 5. It says in verse 5, Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned, but what sayest thou? Now, in the previous verses, there's a woman who's had some sin in her life, and the Pharisees has brought this woman to Jesus and are seeking to stone her. And it says in verse 5, Now Moses in the law had commanded us that such should be stoned, but what sayest thou? So they're questioning Jesus. They're wanting to stone this lady for her sins. And if you look, everybody's familiar with Moses a little bit. We talked about it a couple times. He's brought the children of Israel back in the Old Testament out of Egypt, and he's guiding them through the wilderness now, going into the Promised Land. And during that time, in this verse is referring to the law of Moses. The law of Moses is the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. So in those first 5 books of the Old Testament, Moses gives the law from God. And that's what they're referring to here. We're not going to go through that because that would take a long time, but that's what they're referring to. So in verse 6, well, the law was given to the Israelites. So in verse 6, but they say, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. So they're tempting Jesus here. The Pharisees are tempting Jesus. But Jesus stooped down with his finger and wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. So you imagine this now. The Pharisees are tempting Jesus, and he's ignoring them, basically. He's squatted down on the floor. He's drawing little circles or something. I've read some commentaries of saying what he was writing on the ground, but the Bible doesn't specifically say what he was writing there. But he's just scribbling in the ground, ignoring them. He's not even putting 2 cents into this. And that's how Jesus works. He's not going to sin. He's not going to fall for this how they're trying to deceive him. So, and it says in verse 7, So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him cast the first stone. So, he said, He who is without sin. So the Pharisees now, they're sitting there thinking, well, none of us are, we're not without sin. And so what happened here? So, and again, Jesus stooped down a second time and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convicted of their own conscience, went out one by one, being convicted. So they were when Jesus said that, they were convicted because they realized they had sin in their hearts. And then they went out one by one, being at the eldest even to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. So the woman's still standing with Jesus. So when Jesus had lifted himself up and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where art those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? And she said, No man, Lord. And he said unto her, so Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee, go and sin no more. So, and then in verse 12 is where I'm going to get my lesson out of. So in verse 12 is where my lesson comes out of. Get on the right. We're on the right one. So then Jesus spake unto them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. So Jesus says here, I am the light of the world. And Jesus says, He who that followeth me will also. So we're drawn to the light. So we should be drawn to the light, and we should have the light. I wrote here, there's two kinds of light. How many knows tell me what two kinds of light? Anybody want to guess at which those two are? There's two kinds of light in this world. I just told you one of them. What's the other one? Huh? There's two kinds of light. Darkness is not a light. So the first kind of light is the sun. So the first kind of light is the sun.
And then is second,
The second kind of light is spiritual light. So we have two kinds of light. Yep. Yep. But Jesus is the light, but Jesus is the spiritual light. Light, and I wrote this down, light conveys both the absence of darkness and a quality that helps us see and understand more clearly. So light, the sun, when the sun comes up, and I chose this picture because the sun's coming up over the mountains. So when the sun comes up in the morning, it lights everything, so we can see and we can walk around. If we did not have the sun, who could walk through their yard without running into the tree without the sun lighting the light? Now you don't have a flashlight doing that.
I could.
If there was zero light,
We could.
has anybody ever been in a situation where there is zero light?
When we lost power.
Has anybody ever been to a cave?
When we lost power.
No, there was light.
No, I remember once in the middle of my room at nighttime, all the windows were shut so you couldn't see anything, and all I saw was darkness when I
Has anybody ever been in a cave? Did they take you down deep in that cave and cut the lights off?
Yes.
Zero light. You cannot put your hand right here and see a shadow. You cannot see nothing. So that's what I'm talking about.
I've done that before in my room because it was so dark. I woke up in the middle of the night somehow, and it was that dark.
Did you run into the wall?
No, I just stayed in.
But you're familiar with your room.
Yeah, but I.
So if you walked out here in the woods back here and we had zero light, do you think you could run through the woods at full blast and not run into a tree? No.
We would fall down.
All right. I'm going to share with you another verse here. I normally try to write these verses down so I don't have to go back and forth so much. So in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved on the face of the water. Spirit of God being the key thing here, moved upon the face of the water. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, and that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. So I think we see two things here. Physical light, meaning when God said, "Let there be light," the sun magically just, I ain't going to say magically, but miraculously appeared. Magically is a bad word for that. The sun miraculously appeared when God said, "Let there be light." And it said God saw the light, and the light was good. But we also see the Spirit of God moved. The Spirit of God is also light. So we're talking about over here in John chapter 8:12, Jesus says, "I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness." Well, Jesus is talking about he's the spiritual light. And right here in verse 2, we see the Spirit of God. And I believe the Spirit of God is also light. If we look at verse 4, it said, God saw the light and that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. God divided the light from the darkness. So, and this little candle that's going to burn out in a minute, we see the light, but when God divided the light from the darkness, the light can overcome the darkness, but He divided spirituality from sin. Everybody still with me? It needs some grease on that doorknob. All right. So that's a spiritual light. We need to let... So we need to let God's light shine through us. So in Matthew chapter 5, verse 14 through 15, Jesus says here, "Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick that giveth light unto all them in the house. So like that candle sitting on the piano, when I lit that candle, I put it up there on the piano so all y'all could see it. I could have hid it over there in the corner underneath the piano and y'all wouldn't have been able to see it. I might have caught the rug on fire too, but Jesus tells us here, put it on the candlestick. If we got a light in us, let's let it shine. This thing's slow. What does this represent? Who wants to guess? A star?
It's a sun.
No, it's a star.
It's a star.
It was a guiding light in Matthew that the wise men used to find Jesus. Star of David. So God had used a light to guide the wise men to Jesus. So I wish I had wrote all these verses down. So we go to John 11:10. And it said, but if a man walketh in the night, he stumbles because there is no light in him. And it's talking about, physical light. If you're walking in the dark and you don't have no light, you're going to stumble over stuff. But also, if you have darkness in your heart, you're going to stumble spiritually. The light can guide us. I'm going to go to Psalms 119, 105. 119, verse 105. Psalms 119, verse 105. It just simply says, thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Now, physical light, if you're walking around with a flashlight, you can see where you're going. Your feet you're guided. You can step. The spiritual light does the same thing. It guides us in our heart. It gives us the right path. And I'm going to use an example. Talking about spiritual light and sharing your light. Noah. No, Jeremiah, come here. Come here, Jeremiah. Come here, Jeremiah. I am not going to catch you on fire, I promise. Hold it right there. Huh? So,
Are you sure?
all right. I'm going to light my candle. So this candle represents my spiritual light. So if I want to encourage Noah, see, I got you wrong, Jeremiah. If I want to encourage Jeremiah, I can encourage Jeremiah and I can share my light with him. See there, I shared my light with him. Did my light diminish by doing that? Did my light diminish at all? It did not, but his light's glowing now. So I've encouraged Jeremiah and I've shared my light with him and his light is glowing and my light's glowing. Now say for instance, here's another example I want to give you and I'm going to use something else in a minute probably. Jeremiah's got something going on in his life and he needs somebody to pray with him. He can pray by himself and that's what he needs to do, but what if I pray with him? What if I pray with him? Our lights get bigger. So when two come together and pray together, their lights get bigger. And they even stuck together. All right. I did not catch you on fire. That's good. All right. I got another little example. I got Play-Doh.
Now you're going to look at that and say, what's Play-Doh got to do with light?
Play-Doh has nothing to do. Play-Doh is a thing I needed to use to hold the light.
Does Play-Doh not work or something?
Huh? So I'm going to give you another example. All right. It's a Play-Doh birthday cake. If this works like I hope it does. So this was back to my example with Jeremiah. So there's my light. And I shared my light with Jeremiah. But we needed to come together and pray about something pretty serious. So we get together, both our lights grow a little bit more. But sometimes when we get together as a church and worship, we,
Big car. Whoa.
as we start coming together,
Looks like a shooting.
as we start coming together in church and we worship together, our lights will grow together more and more and more.
Oh my God. Don't burn the church down now.
We're not.
Remember what he said the other day? He said he was gonna try his best not to burn church down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Oh my God. That looks weird.
All right now.
It smells good. Oh my goodness. It smells like candles. I can't wait. Why does it smell like candles?
All right. But that's an example when we come to church. And we worship God together. That's an example because our little light, when we come to church and we start learning more about God and we start worshiping with others, our light will grow. It'll flicker. Now that light flickering like that, that's going to draw more attention. That's going to draw more people to Jesus. And that's what we do when we go on events. We go skating and we're Christians together. Others are going to look at us and they're going to see a larger light flashing and flickering.
That's what happens when you pass out tracks.
That's what happens when you pass out tracts. That's what happens, if we go, I'm going to burn myself.
That's also what happens when you burn a bunch of candles together.
Well, this is an example. God used light. Jesus used light as an example. He said, I am the light of the world. So this is my light all by myself. But when we come together and we go out witnessing together and we go out visiting together, that's why when we go out visiting, we always visit with two. So when we go out visiting with two, we each have a light.
I don't really smell like anything.
But when we go out visiting together with two, our lights come together, our flame's larger. We can, so,
No.
all right.